What's going on, everyone? Jared Sandler here with you live from the Surprise Stadium press box, getting ready actually here on this Sunday. Technically, for us here in the desert, it's morning. Locally, it's just past 12 o'clock, so it's the afternoon. Not that you're watching this live anyway, but getting ready to host a show with Bobby Belt. The Rangers don't have a game today. They have this Sunday off. It's their only off day during the course of the Cactus League schedule. There is an inter-squad scrimmage that's going to start in about 40 minutes from when I'm recording this, involving a lot of the big names, Seager, Simeon, the guys that likely will be a part of the opening day lineup. And then the Rangers are back in action tomorrow. I wanted to just share some initial thoughts. We're 2 games in, not really going to draw any sort of overreactions from those 2 games. But one of the things that has really stood out is just the efforts made from top to bottom to, I don't want to say erase the existing culture, but certainly recreate a winning culture and having that sort of a feel in the clubhouse. You know, last year, obviously these guys wanted to win. I think from the outside looking in, it was quite clear that was going to be a very, very difficult task to at least win to the degree that they were, they would be competitive, and they lost 100 games. But you had a lot of young guys who were just trying to make it on their own. They were just trying to figure out what their place was, and they were just trying to keep their head above water. And so, I think now there's more of a focus on let's win. And even though I think from the front office's standpoint, and hopefully from the fan standpoint, this year is not going to be measured in a binary manner of, success or failure, whether or not they make the playoffs. I think there's a thought that, especially with the additional playoff team, the Rangers should at least be playing competitive baseball throughout most of the year. And by that, I mean, at least a part of the discussion, even if they're, from the outside looking in. And so I think it's just recreating that mindset. And one of the things the Rangers have done in terms of building their camp roster is there are a number of veterans who are in camp who have won. They've either won from a team standpoint, or perhaps they've got a lot of skins on the wall, and they might not all make the team, but having those guys around reinforces competition. That's another thing the Rangers have done. Just quick sidebar. The thought is that Andy Ibanez is going to get a lot of runway to be the third baseman, but the Rangers have gone out. They've added Brad Miller. They've added Matt Carpenter. It's not like they're just handing people jobs, right? Same with Leody Taveras. I don't know that Leody Taveras is going to be on the opening day roster. And with Leody, if he spends a full year in AAA, he still would be younger than most AAA players. So it wouldn't be a bad thing. But anyway, you think of the guys the Rangers have added, the aforementioned Matt Carpenter, World Series winner. Brad Miller is a guy who, is a veteran player and a great clubhouse guy. He's got a tremendous reputation in that regard. Cole Calhoun, same thing. He's been on some good teams, maybe hasn't won at a high level, but this is an all-star, a Gold Glove winner, and another guy who is seen as a tremendous teammate. Jake Marisnick, maybe not the most vocal guy, but he's won a World Series and he's competed at a very high level. And so you get guys like that. Greg Holland won a World Series, competed at a very high level, right? There's a theme here, and not all these guys are going to make the team, but that does seem to be a big point of emphasis. Now, that's fuzzy, right? You can't quantify that. How many wins does that add? How does that make guys better? I don't know. But the reality is when you lose 100 games and you're coming off, let's see, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, really 5 straight non-competitive seasons, you've got to recreate and reestablish a winning culture. Having guys who have won or have accomplished at a high level helps you do that before some of the other guys that you've had internally get to the point where they can also say, I have won or I've accomplished. So, and then, not to mention Corey Seager and Marcus Simeon. Simeon's been a regular in the playoffs and obviously achieved at a high level. Corey Seager has won a World Series and achieved at a high level. And Corey specifically has achieved at a high level in the playoffs too, in terms of individual performance. In no particular order here, just a random bullet point. The Rangers, as we've talked about, have a ton of young infielders infield prospects, guys like Josh Smith and Ezekiel Duran, and obviously Josh Young, who's hurt, and Davis Wenzel are a part of that, and guys coming up the system like Maximo Acosta and Luis Angel Acuna, and just, they seem to have a lot of depth in their farm system with their infield talent. Justin Foscue, can't forget him, and Blaine Krim. One guy who's really stood out to people since he's been in the organization, and we really haven't gotten to see a ton of him because he was a mid-season acquisition via trade, but Josh Smith. We need to see these guys obviously in game situations and over the course of the season, but I've had a number of people independently bring up Josh Smith as a guy who's really stood out. So just something to watch for there, a guy who, apparently special with the bat and can play short, can play second, can play third. We saw Jack Leiter pitch in the opener, went almost 2 innings. First inning, struck out the side, 2 strikeouts on 97, 98 mile an hour fastballs, another on a breaking ball. Retired the first 5 batters he faced, and then seemed to hit a bit of a wall. You got to imagine a little bit of an emotional wall for a guy who's making his first real professional appearance. He didn't pitch in the minors last year. After the Rangers drafted him, he just continued to work out, and they shut him down because of the heavy workload at Vanderbilt. So, but there's a lot to really be excited about. He was facing big league hitters, right? It wasn't like he was just facing number 97 and number 63 guys who weren't going to sniff the big leagues. He was facing some real dudes and was having a lot of success with the elevated fastball. He's talked about just improving the consistency with the changeup and getting a more consistent shape on the breaking balls. So, I expect him to be in the minors all year, probably starting at AA, hopefully getting up to AAA, and then being an option to be on the big league roster when 2023 rolls around. I think the thought is that this team's going to be able to hit Seager, Simeon, Garver, Nathaniel Lowe, who really didn't have that bad of a year at all last year. The possibility of Adolis Garcia being able to somewhat replicate. Andy Ibanez is a guy who, if he is able to continue on the path maybe that he laid down last year, will hit. I think the question is whether this team's going to be able to pitch. John Gray, Taylor Hearn, Dane Dunning in the rotation, Martin Perez in the rotation. None of those guys yet really, whether it's a young guy like Taylor Hearn, who's still trying to prove himself, had a great year last year once he moved into the rotation, but still has a lot to prove, or, a guy like Martin Perez, who is a veteran pitcher, but not someone who's got the upside that would excite you. The Rangers have a lot of questions in their rotation. I think there's a lot of excitement and optimism about John Gray and who he could become. But that's going to be a big question, is how the Rangers are going to pitch. And I imagine you're going to see a lot of different names on the mound for the Rangers this year, both in the rotation and in the bullpen, as they, as younger guys earn opportunities, and, it's going to be survival of the fittest. The job competition, while there isn't maybe the tremendous upside, the guys who are going to start on the big league roster, there are guys coming up through the system who, there's a lot of excitement. Guys like Jack Leiter, who, again, not really going to be an option this year, but Cole Winn and Ricky Vanasco. And then, of course, Glenn Otto and AJ Alexi. What's going to happen with Spencer Howard? I think there are a lot of questions, but I think the Rangers are going to address this next offseason in some way. Guys like Jacob deGrom and Aaron Nola are free agents, and I think the Rangers are prepared to invest a lot of money in them. Clayton Kershaw will be a free agent again. I wouldn't rule that one out. But the Rangers also want to try and find some answers internally. And I think there are going to be a lot of different guys getting opportunities, just because I don't think that it's realistic, A, that, you're not going to have perfect health, but B, chances are some of these guys are going to succeed and others might falter. And so, again, that survival of the fittest is really going to come into play. There you go. Those are just some initial camp observations. Looking forward to talking to you throughout camp and as we get towards opening day. Take care.